I still remember the piercing laughter that shattered my silence as my private messages to her splashed across the projection screen. My hands trembled, my cheeks burned. And in that moment, I wanted to disappear forever. But today, as I stand before thousands at the National LGBTQ+ Youth Summit, that same vulnerability is transformed into my greatest strength. This is the story of how the girl who once hid in bathroom stalls to escape torment became the woman who created a movement that has saved lives across 37 states. What happens when your most intimate secrets become public entertainment? Sarah never imagined her private messages would become a spectacle for the entire school. Thursday morning broke with the familiar golden light of autumn streaming through Sarah's bedroom window. She lingered over her phone, rereading last night's messages from Emily with a cautious smile. For 3 weeks, they had been exchanging increasingly personal texts, confessions about family troubles, shared music recommendations, and finally, her hesitant admission about her feelings. Emily's response had been everything she'd hoped for. The weight of 17 years of confusion had begun to lift from Sarah's shoulders, one message notification at a time. She dressed with unusual care that morning, the soft blue sweater her grandmother had given her, a touch of vanilla perfume. The space between her and Emily had become sacred, a fragile bloom she wasn't ready to expose to others yet. Her anticipation built through her morning classes as lunch period approached, her first chance to see Emily since everything had changed. The cafeteria doors felt inexplicably heavy. The usual cacophony stopped abruptly, replaced by an unnatural silence that raised the hair on Sarah's arms, the air suddenly cold against her flushed skin. She froze, sensing that something was terribly wrong. Then she looked up. The projector screen displayed page after page of her private messages with Emily. A cruel laugh triggered a wave of snickering. Across the room, Emily stood with her basketball teammates who were pointedly moving away from her, face drained of color like a photograph left too long in sunlight. Heat bloomed across Sarah's face, her throat constricted. The floor beneath her seemed to tilt. Someone whispered "Dyke," just loud enough for her to hear, the word entering her like a physical blow. Mr. Gonzalez, the vice principal, stood nearby, making no move to shut down the projector. "I thought you should know what your friend really thinks about you," called Jason Miller, Emily's ex-boyfriend, holding Sarah's stolen phone aloft like a trophy. The next weeks passed in a fog. Sarah navigated lesser-used hallways, ate in empty classrooms, and timed her bathroom visits to avoid groups of whispering girls. Her B average slipped. Each morning brought dread, each night tears her mother attributed to teenage mood swings. Friends drifted away. "My mom thinks maybe we should take a break," explained Maddie, her best friend since elementary school. "Nothing personal, it's just complicated right now." 6 weeks after the projection, Sarah stood at her bedroom window, staring down at the concrete driveway 3 stories below. The house was empty. The silence pressed against her eardrums like physical pressure. The concrete offered a permanent solution to temporary pain. Her phone buzzed. The news headline glowed coldly. "Local teen takes own life after bullying." The article detailed how a boy from a neighboring school had been outed and harassed until he saw no other option. Sarah's hands trembled as she read details that mirrored her own experience with eerie precision. That devastating headline became Sarah's unlikely salvation, the moment when isolation's gravity lost its fatal pull. In the shadowed corners of the internet, far from the fluorescent glare of high school hallways, she would discover a paradoxical truth. Sometimes, those who understand your darkness best are strangers you've never met. The days following her encounter with that tragic news story unfolded in a haze of detachment. Sarah's bedroom, with its faded constellation stickers and desk pushed against the window, transformed into both sanctuary and prison. The world outside continued its relentless rhythm, her parents' muffled conversations about her withdrawal, the doorbell chiming when teachers sent missed assignments, the normal sounds of a universe she no longer felt part of. At night, when the house fell silent, Sarah's fingers hovered over her keyboard. Her search history revealed her descent. How to Stop Feeling This Way became, Does It Ever Get Better became stories of people who survived bullying. The blue light illuminated her tear-streaked face as she searched for evidence that someone had survived this path. An algorithm's suggestion led her to Survivor's Circle. Here Phoenix Rising and Not Broken Just Bent shared stories with painful familiarity. As Glassheart 17, Sarah observed for weeks. She absorbed their language, trauma as one chapter rather than a definition. They shared breathing techniques for panic attacks and ways to find joy when happiness seemed impossible. The watershed moment came at 2:37 a.m. on a Tuesday. Sarah's trembling fingers typed her complete story. The projection, the hallway slurs, the anonymous messages, the crushing weight of pretending. She hit post, convinced rejection would follow. Within minutes, responses appeared. "I see you," wrote Scarred But Standing. "Your pain matters," added Truthseeker 22. "I felt the same way last year, but I promise it won't always hurt this much," shared Beyond the Storm. This validation washed over her like warm rain after months of drought. These digital connections became her lifelines. She returned nightly, sharing more details, eventually offering insights to newcomers. When Breaking Point contemplated disappearing after being outed, Sarah stayed online until dawn, sharing resources through their darkest hours. Her involvement deepened. She documented patterns in stories, how certain schools fostered severe bullying, which interventions helped, how isolation emerged as the most dangerous factor. Her compiled resources were eventually pinned to the forum's top. Through these communities, Sarah discovered terminology that framed her experiences: minority stress, heteronormativity, internalized homophobia. These weren't just academic terms, but tools transforming her suffering into something she could analyze and potentially change. The most profound revelation came during a discussion with forum members across 3 continents. As they shared similar experiences despite different backgrounds, Sarah realized her pain wasn't random, but part of a pattern, a systemic failure affecting countless others. And patterns, unlike random suffering, could be disrupted through collective action. "Maybe what happened to me wasn't just about me," she wrote in a post later quoted by members. "Maybe it's evidence of something bigger that needs to change, and maybe we're exactly the people who need to change it." Sarah's online activism took on a new dimension when she learned about Jamie Winters. Unlike the anonymous teen from the news article, Jamie was a sophomore at Westlake High, just 20 miles from Sarah's school. His parents had found him in the garage after weeks of torment over rumors about his sexuality. The proximity made digital advocacy feel insufficient, like trying to extinguish a house fire with a garden hose. When Jamie's disappearing ideas made headlines, the boundary between Sarah's virtual sanctuary and physical reality dissolved completely. "I keep typing words into the void," she confessed online, "while kids like Jamie are dying in the real world. How many more before something changes?" Sarah spent 3 sleepless nights examining her school district's policy handbook. Each page revealed comprehensive protections against racial discrimination and religious intolerance, but silence regarding LGBTQ+ students. In her notebook margins, Sarah documented incidents she'd witnessed, matching each against the barren policy landscape. The school board meeting loomed on the calendar. Stepping out from behind her screen name meant exposing herself to the community that had shattered her once before. Her bedroom mirror became both confidant and critic as she selected a simple blue button-down and black pants, armor for an uncertain battle. By meeting day, Sarah had rewritten her speech countless times. Her throat constricted, food became impossible, and her carefully folded note cards barely stayed in her trembling hands. The meeting room felt smaller than imagined, fluorescent lighting exposing every vulnerability. 5 board members sat elevated like judges. Sarah recognized Mrs. Kessler, who had bagged her groceries every Saturday. Principal Jenkins examined his papers, the same avoidance he'd perfected after the projection. Parents filled rows behind her, whispering, "That's the girl who..." and "Why is she even here?" When called for public comment, item 14, bullying policy review, Sarah approached the podium. The words on her cards dissolved. 5 seconds of silence stretched into eternity. Sarah's voice cracked. She closed her eyes, picturing Jamie's face, remembering forum members who had trusted her. "I'm here because our policies are failing to protect students like me, and like Jamie Winters." The room temperature dropped at Jamie's name. Sarah continued, outlining policy gaps and harassment incidents. As she finished, Eliza Chen, a girl from chemistry lab, stood up. "Everything Sarah described happens daily at our school. I've seen it." Ms. Ramirez, a history teacher, added, "As educators, we see the harassment but lack protocols. We need these policies." The chairman hastily moved on, but something had shifted. Cracks appeared in the silence wall. The next day's newspaper ran, "Student Challenges District on LGBTQ+ protections." By afternoon, students from neighboring districts asked how to speak at their board meetings. A parent from Jamie's school called requesting Sarah's research. The newspaper article unleashed a wave of desperate pleas that would transform Sarah's understanding of why she had survived her darkest moments. As regional media outlets picked up the story of her school board confrontation, her phone and social media accounts became conduits for pain she hadn't anticipated. Messages arrived at all hours, from neighboring towns at first, then from counties away, eventually crossing state lines. They carried variations of the same haunting theme. I thought I was the only one. Each message revealed a young person whose experience mirrored fragments of Sarah's own. The isolation, the targeted humiliation, the adults who looked away. Many confided thoughts of disappearing. Sarah would sit at her kitchen table until dawn, composing responses that might serve as lifelines for those teetering on the same precipice she had faced. "I need something more sustainable," she told her parents, dark circles betraying another night of crisis intervention. Within days, Sarah transformed her kitchen into command central. Resource lists, regional contacts, and the framework for a website. She named it the Broken Mirror Project, creating a digital sanctuary with anonymous forums and regional resource directories. Most critically, she established a chat function staffed by volunteers from her online networks. Sarah handled the overnight shifts herself, keeping vigil during those hours when despair often crystallized into dangerous plans. Her academic life receded as she transitioned to online learning, completing assignments between interventions. The digital classroom protected her from the continued harassment that persisted despite her public stand. Her days divided into precise segments: schoolwork during daylight, website maintenance at dusk, and direct support through the night. By the 3rd month, patterns emerged from the hundreds of stories flowing through her site. Sarah documented which school environments fostered severe bullying, which strategies helped survivors, and which warning signs preceded crises. Schools with high rates of LGBTQ+ harassment shared distinct traits. athletic departments with outsized influence, administrations that minimized bullying as conflict, and policies that punished both targets and aggressors. Late one night, Sarah discovered something chilling in her database. The tactics described across dozens of schools followed identical patterns: deliberate isolation, public humiliation involving private information, and systematic rumor campaigns. Every wound inflicted on her had inadvertently taught her exactly what healing required. This revelation crystallized during a crisis call with 15-year-old Alex. Outed by former friends, he had messaged while sitting in a closet with pills, convinced death was his only escape from overwhelming shame. "I know exactly where you are," Sarah told him, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I can see the whole map of this territory because I've walked every inch of it. This place feels like the end, but it's a terrible passage to somewhere else." For 90 minutes, she guided him through each thought spiral, each moment when shame threatened to pull him under. When emergency services finally reached Alex, Sarah sat trembling in her kitchen. She understood then what her former bullies had unknowingly given her: a survivor's intimate knowledge of destruction, which had become her most powerful tool for creating salvation. In the stillness of her kitchen that night, Sarah made a decision that would forever alter the battlefield. No longer would she only catch those falling. She would dismantle the structures that pushed them to the edge. The patterns revealed in her spreadsheets formed an architectural blueprint of institutional failure. With trembling hands, she began transforming her kitchen table operation into a data-driven advocacy campaign, moving beyond individual rescue towards systemic revolution. Her initial approaches to school administrators met walls of indifference. "These are isolated incidents," one superintendent told her, sliding her report back unread. Another suggested she was too emotionally invested. Sarah realized empathy alone couldn't move bureaucratic mountains. She immersed herself in policy language, translating heart-wrenching stories into the clinical metrics administrators understood. Her flowcharts connected hostile environments to measurable outcomes: attendance drops, GPA declines, and disappearing attempts, building frameworks of evidence where dismissal once stood. When I started speaking their language, liability, retention rates, district rankings, they started listening, Sarah explained. She formed alliances with established advocacy groups like the Rainbow Coalition and PFLAG, trading her raw data for their political experience. The spotlight brought harsh shadows. Threats filled her inbox. Anonymous callers harassed her family. A brick shattered her window with attention seeker attached. Each attack forced her to navigate between being a trauma survivor and movement leader. "I learned to schedule my panic attacks," she confided to her therapist, "between updating the resource database and calculus homework." College applications remained half completed. Senior prom passed unattended, and friendships withered as normal teenage life became impossible. From this struggle emerged her hatred recycling methodology, documenting every piece of opposition and transforming it into change. When critics claimed LGBTQ+ students sought special treatment, she crafted policy language emphasizing equal protection under existing frameworks. When officials claimed ignorance, she created training modules. Her opposition matrix became her secret weapon, a comprehensive catalogue of every dismissal she'd encountered, paired with evidence-based counter-arguments. This allowed her to respond to resistance with precision rather than defensive emotion. The turning point came when the state deputy superintendent wandered into her small-room conference presentation. 3 weeks later, Sarah addressed the State Education Association's Leadership Summit, displaying the correlations between hostile environments and educational outcomes. 42% increased absenteeism, 27% GPA drop, and an 8-fold increase in disappearing ideation. "These numbers represent real students in your districts," she told the room of superintendents. "Every statistic has a face, a name, and a future that your policies will either protect or jeopardize." When she finished, applause built from tentative to sustained acknowledgement. By evening's end, 17 districts had requested her model policies, transforming institutional barriers into foundations for change. 7. Full circle. Returning to ground zero success had transformed Sarah from a local advocate into a national voice, her data-driven approach opening doors across 37 states. Yet there remained one door she had never imagined walking through again. How does one prepare to stand as a teacher in the same rooms where they were taught they didn't belong? The email arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning. The district superintendent's invitation to conduct professional development at Lakeside High, her former school, sent her coffee mug crashing to the floor, jagged pieces mirroring the fragmentation in her chest. That night, the nightmares returned. She was 17 again, cornered in hallways, the weight of stairs pressing against her skin. "Your body remembers," Dr. Rivera explained during therapy, "but remembering doesn't mean regression. We can prepare for this." Together, they developed re-entry protocols, boundaries for discussing personal history, grounding techniques for triggers, and reframing her return not as a victim's homecoming, but as a strategic intervention. Sarah wasn't seeking closure, she was delivering expertise the school desperately needed. Sarah built her curriculum using Lakeside's own data. She analyzed disciplinary reports revealing systemic blind spots and interviewed current LGBTQ+ students, mapping invisible boundaries that echoed her past. The morning before the workshop, she adjusted her blazer, armor against memories, repeating, "You're not returning to the past, you're reshaping the future." The school entrance felt simultaneously foreign and familiar. Principal Jenkins, grayer now with the same uncomfortable smile, introduced her with rehearsed enthusiasm that never reached his eyes. Sarah scanned the audience methodically. There sat Mr. Delaney, who had watched silently when seniors blocked her from lab stations. Nearby was Ms. Wilson, who pretended not to hear locker room slurs. Their presence constricted Sarah's throat before she implemented breathing technique number 3, 4 counts in, 7 hold, 8 release. She began with data, her shield against vulnerability. For 2 hours, she was purely the expert they'd invited, presenting solution frameworks and intervention protocols. After lunch, the workshop transformed. Groups role-played scenarios based on case studies Sarah had compiled. She placed a scenario card before Ms. Wilson. A student-athlete overhears homophobic language in the locker room. What specific action does the supervising teacher take? The room's energy shifted. Something in Sarah's precision raised questions. During feedback, a young English teacher asked, "How did you become so familiar with our specific challenges?" Sarah paused, feeling 65 gazes upon her. This moment, she had prepared for it with Dr. Rivera. "I was a student here, class of 2018. Comprehension washed across faces." Principal Jenkins shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Delaney's face drained of color. Sarah pivoted deliberately. "But today isn't about the past. It's about creating systems that protect current and future students." She directed their attention to implementation plans with clear accountability measures. "You don't need to be perfect," she concluded. "You need to be consistent. Students are watching to see if your commitment wavers when inconvenient. They notice who speaks up and who stays silent. They remember." As darkness faded into dawn, I thought about Sarah's journey. a path from the cold floors of school bathroom stalls to international conference stages. Her scars have become a topographical map guiding others through similar terrain. When memories resurface like ghosts, she embraces healing as an ongoing practice. Sarah's story transcends her personal experience. Our deepest wounds contain medicine others need. Those who've navigated pain's labyrinth understand its corridors in ways theory never could. Their broken places become windows where light enters. For anyone watching from isolation, today's breaking points may be tomorrow's purpose. Your suffering might build bridges others desperately need. In our perfection-obsessed world, it's our acknowledged brokenness that ultimately connects us and moves us forward together.